And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game from Grana called Dwergar, which is about dwarves excavating different materials. It seems like dwarves in games are used for two things, for fighting or for mining. In this one, you're mining, and you want to be the best miner, 49er, as you go in and get the different materials that you need, but you're going to have to put them in carts and wheel them to the surface first. This is what we call a worker placement game, a game where you have these workers and you'll place them on the board. With a few twists, let's take a look. For this game, players are trying to get the most points, and one of the ways they're going to do that is you're going to be placing workers on the board. Now you'll notice there are purple, white, and orange different dudes on the board, and these are engineers, blacksmiths are the white ones, and iron workers, which are orange. Although, honestly, you're going to forget which one is which. Doesn't really matter. They're just purple, white, and orange. You also have your own worker of your own color. And so on a player's turn, they're going to get to put out a worker and do an action. You have three actions you can take. And in fact, one of your actions can be pulling your own guy off the board. But usually, you'll put your person on the board, and then wherever you put them, you're going to take the action to that spot. And if there is a worker there, you'll get them. If there's not a worker there for any reason, then you don't get anybody. So you have more options the more of these that you get. If I place this one here, I get it. If I place let's say I'm the blue player and place here, I don't get this worker. Instead, that worker goes back to the yellow player. Now, many of the spots on the board are going to give you actions. And if you place someone of a specific color there, you can get a bonus action. So if I place a purple here, I'm simply going to get the main action there, which lets me light a furnace. If I place a white one here, I'm going to light a furnace, and I also will raise my heat level 2 spaces. Or I could just raise my heat level 2 spaces. You don't have to take both actions. You can pick one of the two actions. And if I put an orange worker there, then I would light all my furnaces. And then, of course, I could light a new one, but that kind of duplicates itself. So players are trying to figure out what action, when you place a color somewhere, you can get a bonus depending on what you've put there. As the game goes by, players will have the opportunity to pay amounts of different resources to put a furnace in a spot, and then when someone else goes to that spot and uses it, you're going to get victory points each time they do so. Many of the action spots in the game have to do with the mines here. When you go to a mine spot, you're going to get resources. It shows you on next to here what resources you're going to get. So if I go here, for example, I'm going to get 3 of the coal, and I'll put the coal in my color. So if I'm the yellow player, I would put it in this section here. If I go to this spot in the very bottom, I'll get one of this purple material, and again, maybe I'm the green player, I put it there. And there are other action spots which are going to move these up to the top. So you'd put the bottom one here and move it up, and when one gets to the top, everyone gets their stuff that's on it. So their yellow would get their 4 coal, and we move it up. So each spot can only have stuff in it. You can build furnaces here too, which means anytime someone goes there, you also get something. So that's kind of cool. And you're going to be moving these over and just constantly be reshuffling this to get your stuff to the top. If you use your color worker here, they actually sit in the mine car, and you'll get them back when they come out the top. Each player has their own player board, and they're going to have some unlit furnaces on at the beginning, as well as places to store the crystals, your gold, your iron, and your stone resources. And these furnaces can provide you heat. You want to get them lit. If you have a lit furnace at any time in your turn, you can spend it to get a heat. But you can also get heat through other means. But all your heat's going to go away at the end of a turn. And at the end of every round, if you have at least one lit furnace, you can light another one of your furnaces. And there's ways to build more furnaces over the game so you can spend them to get heat. And this is done because you want to accomplish different goals here. You'll notice that this one here, for example, costs 2 coal and 1 iron, which will give you 2 victory points. Whenever you build this card, you also have the option to upgrade it too. I can pay 2 heat, and then it will be worth victory points at the end of the game for every green card. This one here, for example, I need to spend 2 heat, 2 coal, and an iron for 4 points. If I spend another 2 heat, another 2 coal, and another iron, I'll get 4 points and a gold. Now, you can do just part of a card, and then one of the action space on the board will let you pay the upgrade costs, and you're simply going to put them to the right or left of your player board to show if they've been done or not. But you can get a lot of points. I mean, this one here, you'll see is 6 points, but at the end of the game, could be an additional 10 points if you do this upgrade thing, although it's going to be expensive, costing a crystal and 3 coal and going down a heat. All this is going to be happening over the course of 9, or if you want to play a shorter game, 7 rounds. You'll keep track of each round. Players have, again, 3 actions they can take on their round. And then there's an event card, like this raises everyone's heat by 2. And you're just going to, these event cards help keep track of the game too, to the point where I'm not even sure this was needed. You just put a certain number of event cards here. And some event cards will stay into play for that round. That's pretty much it. At the end of the rounds, whoever has the most points is the winner. You're going to have endgame scoring from some of these cards. You'll also notice these cards have 2 different piles, and they're going to get better as the game goes by. They're harder to score, but they're also going to provide more victory points as time goes by. Most points, winner. Now, these are really neat to have these different stones. I mean, they're actual stones. The game also comes with these boxes to put things in. I don't know if this is in every game or if I got a deluxe version. I don't particularly like the boxes that much because while they're cool to store things outside the game, in the game, this lid kind of flops around and it's hard to pull the stuff out. But the stones look cool. Here is the problem. The problem is the board itself. You can see here that you have coal and iron. This gives you 2. This is 2 iron and 1 coal. I can tell those apart because they're next to each other. But when you just see one, it's not always easy to remember which one it is. Now, I have pretty good lighting here because this is the studio of the Dice Tower. But if you don't have good lighting, we found that those were a little difficult to tell apart. The board is also fairly busy and everything is symbols. Now, they do give you this sheet that has all the different symbols on it. So this will show you what you have for the most part. But just keep that in mind. There's a lot of symbols and you're constantly going to be referring to that to figure out what anything does at any given moment. The components are pretty good. This is a little fiddly moving it around. And like I said, I wish they had kind of washed out the background of the board slightly so I could see the symbols. It's okay components, but man, I do like those stones. They're really neat. Okay, so there's a lot of things that are cool in this. The idea of placing a worker and getting one is a fascinating one. I like that. It's been used before in Champions of Midgard from Garfield games. So the idea there is pretty cool. The idea that if your own color, you put it down, and then you're hoping someone else wants to go to that spot so you get it back for free. Of course, they might not want to go to that spot because you're there and it comes back to you. So that's an interesting idea. The other interesting idea is putting stuff in these mine carts and shooting it to the surface. I think that's cool. I like the idea of putting stuff into mine carts and moving them up to the surface. The idea of getting different rocks and turning them in for points, I also enjoy that. And yet, the whole thing does not come together in a way that I really found to be enjoyable, to the point where the 9-round game feels way too long anyway, but even 7 rounds, I was like, is this over yet? Because you just do the same things. I don't think the heat system is interesting at all. So you have these furnaces, they start unlit, you go to an action space, you light one. At the end of your turn, if you have one lit, you can light another one, but then you spend those to get a few heat. You're better off just going to a spot that gives you some heat. But I get it, as you get more and more furnaces, that can kind of ramp up. I just found that to be not interesting at all. The heat's essentially a resource that you get on a turn and then you lose it at the end of a turn. You have your heat right now and then. But it never came across as, woo, heat. I just didn't like that. Also, putting your rocks in these carts that go to the surface, cool concept that didn't really pay off. You just put them in and people are going to raise them. You're forced to raise everybody else's stuff, so they're all going to come out anyway. I never sit there and go, well, I'm not going to raise mine because that will help you. No, we all need resources. We all have to raise it. So because of that, yes, you can get points for raising it. if you're the person who raises it, but it never felt like it was a struggle going, oh, I don't want to raise this because it will help other people getting it out. Yes, I don't want to help you, but I'm forced to do it for myself. So that just didn't turn out to be that interesting. And then spending the rocks to get the cards was kind of like, ooh, I spend this combination to get this card. I have a bunch of rocks, but they don't meet the combinations here. Hopefully one will turn over. We've seen this in a lot of other games. But also the different workers that are different colors, it just felt very lucky, like I need to take that action. That action's really good if you have an orange worker. I don't have an orange worker, so I guess I could go to this spot to get an orange worker, but I don't really need that. And then if I'm taking an action I don't need so that this action's better, is it worth doing at all? It just never felt very interesting. I think that's my problem with the whole game, is it sounds more interesting than it felt. It sounds interesting to mine these resources, card them up to the top, spend them to get cards, placing workers down, getting other workers. But the gameplay felt really slow. The heat things were a little fiddly to work with. You're constantly checking actions on the board to see what points you get. The cards are worth variable amounts of points, but it's hard to kind of gauge what coal is worth compared to gold, for example. And all in all, when I was done playing it, I've had this idea of there's some interesting ideas here, but it's not a worker placement game, I think, that stands out in the crowd. You want to put a worker out, take a different one in its place. The Raiders of Scythia does it better. If you want a game where you turn in resources, Lords of Waterdeep does that better. And both of those games are much older games than this one. This is a brand new one, but I didn't feel like it stood out. Adding in the mix of symbols that's not so easy to understand, and the confusion between the coal and the iron on the board, and it becomes a game that kind of drags for people, and there wasn't a lot of excitement in there. But hey, maybe it's something that does excite you. Dwarves, mining, and you like the idea of those mine carts going up, even though I just realized now that as I showed you these, my mine carts were apparently upside down. They should have been the other way up. But either way, they're all still moving in the same way. It's fun in its concept, but not in conclusion for me. But you may vary. Either way, check it out if you want to. That's Dwergar. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment, it's just not very interesting.